You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. By going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can make this possible.
The Galveston Police Department issued an apology last Monday after an image was posted on social media showing two mounted police officers, both white, leading Mr. Donald Neely, a black man, handcuffed behind their horses and attached by what looked like a rope or leash. The police department acknowledged that the incident may have, quote, unnecessarily, end quote, been embarrassing for Neely and apologized for the poor judgment of mounted officers P. Brosch and A. Smith. Well, that's not good enough. Attorney Benjamin Crump wants to know why and is demanding that the police release the body cam footage. Joining me now is Attorney Crump, who is one of the attorneys representing Donald Neely. Attorney Crump, good to see you. Sorry it's under these circumstances.
It is, and Monique, I'm so happy to be talking with you because you have a unique perspective about Galveston, Texas, being that you were born in Galveston, Texas. So I want to make a plea right here on the show that we need you to come home and join us to help get justice for Donald Neely, who is a wonderful young man who's challenged by mental illness. I spent a lot of time with him today. And he comes across very childlike, and then it just makes you infuriated that these police officers would beat this young man, treat him in this manner. They beat him on previous occasions, but this time they tied him, to a rope and dragged him down the street in Galveston, Texas. And the police chief tried to say, well, it was just their policy. These are good police officers. They are of good character. And so I made a proclamation today that if they're such good police of good character, then you should have no problem being transparent and releasing the body cam video so we can see the true content of their character when we examine how they talked to and how they treated this unarmed black man who was suffering from mental illness.
Well, Ben, you and I have talked through many cases in the past few years, and I certainly am just horrified to hear of anything like this happening, not just in my hometown where I grew up, but where my parents still live to this very day, and all of my family and friends. I was just there just over a month ago, but I was sharing with you earlier today how it was just a year ago when we were celebrating Juneteenth right there in Galveston. I was the keynote for the inaugural social justice luncheon. Many people don't know Galveston, Texas is the home of Juneteenth. It was June 19th there in Galveston, Texas, that the news of the freed slaves in the South finally reached the South area, and it happened right there in Galveston, right there in front of the Ashton Villa, and I ended up reading from parts of Frederick Douglass's speech just this year while I was home. So we are all reeling from this information, and one of the things that I'm wondering, Ben, because we've been told so far that the guidelines provided for this practice, which seems to any blatant observer of humanity to be inhumane. Is it true? Have you had an opportunity to review and see that this actually was something the police were trained on?
It's so interesting, Monique. The police chief and the police department said, well, this is ASHA policy, so the officers were just trained in following policy. So then when we asked them, well, present the policy to us, they said, oh, it's not in writing. It's just a policy that they're taught on. And so, as a civil rights lawyer and a constitutional lawyer, Monique, I have a problem, and I know you have a problem because you're a great constitutional lawyer. Well, how you have a law and a policy, but yet it's not in writing. So how does that give notice to the public what the police can and cannot do legally? And so it's so many things about this case which seems they are trying to cover up and justify something that is unjustifiable. Because when those two white police officers on horseback marched this unarmed black man down the streets of Galveston, Texas, it was very eerie because it conjured up historical memories of slave hunters putting rope on black people and dragging them to the slave auctions.
That's right. That's right. And that's what it conjured up for so many of us, Ben. But you're asking them to do something. First, you want them to release the body cam footage. Have you gotten any response from the city as to when that will happen?
No response based on Texas Public Information Act. We gave the demand to the city police department. They have 20 business days to make a decision. They can do the right thing and show leadership and transparency and give it up, or they can punt it to the Texas Attorney General, which he will have 45 days, which means they're going to fight it and not give it to us. So what we did, we made a proclamation of our own that if they don't give that video up in 30 days, we're going to invite other civil rights activists and other mental illness advocates and other human rights advocates from all around America to come and have a great march on Washington. And we're going to march from Juneteenth inauguration site where they read the speech those many years ago. And we're going to then march right down the same street that they dragged Donald Neely down to show him that we're standing with him and that we're also demanding equal justice and treatment of not only African American and other minorities, but also and especially people who are suffering from mental illness.
Absolutely.
And we need you to be there, Monique. We need your voice.
Oh, well, Lord knows I'll do what I can, Ben. But joining me on the panel, I'm bringing in reinforcements today, is Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist and president emerita at Bennett College, political analyst Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, and Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the Environmental Protection Agency. Let me start with you, Dr. Malveaux. What in the world?
What in the world? As Attorney Crump has said, this is replete with history.
Yeah.
To have a black man on rope behind horses. We've seen these pictures.
Yeah.
Unfortunately or fortunately, Monique, I've been researching 1919 lynching in terms of the economic suppression of our people. And so I've been in the Library of Congress where they threaten to put me out because I keep making mouth noises when I see some of these pictures. I'm like, ooh. Some of the pictures, but this is reminiscent of some of the pictures that I saw from a century ago.
Yeah.
What's also ironic is that in the wake of both El Paso and Dayton, 45 has talked about mental illness. Mm-hmm. But when the African-American person has a mental illness, this is something that no one wants to pay attention to. These Galveston police must know that this man is mentally ill, given the number of times that he has law enforcement encounters. I think the report said 6 or 7 times he's had encounters, he's been arrested, he's been beaten. This is a young man who is not well. So the response to someone who is not well should not be to put a rope on them and drag them down the street. Let's not forget what happened in Texas not too long ago to James Byrd. So dragging down streets is something that people seem to like to do in Texas, not to disrespect your home state or anything, because it could happen in any state.
Hey.
But the fact is that this just sent chills up my spine when I saw it. And so, Attorney Crump, I'm always grateful to you for the kind of leadership that you put out there in terms of saying, let us march. And Monique will be there. Because
she's offering me up. See that?
I am. I kind of like that. You know, the elder here.
Sacrificial lamb, prodigal daughter.
but no, we all know how important this is. And so I thank you for your leadership and for the coalition. Because we've seen not only African Americans who experience mental illness, but also whites, disabled. There was a case here in Washington not too long ago where an autistic young man was beaten by police and then choked to death. So these things happen because these police, don't say they haven't been trained at all. You don't have to have a whole lot of education, unfortunately. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. What kind of training do these people get?
Well, but you would be surprised by that. One of the things I know for sure from spending over a decade defending a municipality, the District of Columbia, in fact, in the Attorney General's office, is that the guidelines can say one thing, and police officers can be trained according to those guidelines, but the guidelines can be so tone deaf, time deaf, can really not catch up at all with what people are saying here. They're calling optics, but of course it's beyond optics. What it really boils down to, and I want to bring you in, Mustafa, is when you're dealing with someone who may be volatile, and maybe they knew that, maybe they didn't. I don't know what kind of all of the history was with Mr. Neely. When you're dealing with someone who has mental challenges, whether it's autism or whether it's some other form of a depression or whether it's a neurological disorder, sometimes people even who have epilepsy can present as if they are being non-compliant and unfortunately end up arrested, end up harmed, end up dead, because if officers aren't trained not just in how to detain somebody, but trained in how to handle it when someone has mental capacity issues, then we end up right where we are, right, Mustafa?
Yeah, definitely. But we should also call out the fact that in Galveston they have police cars. And if someone has been apprehended, they could very easily place that individual in a police car. If they felt that there was a psychological issue that was going on, they could call in the EMTs, and then they could take them and get them evaluated. You don't walk them down the street. What this is, there's a psychological component to it, but it's a little different than we're talking about. Yes, with the gentleman, we have to make sure that there's the evaluation of him. But this is about sending a message to the community that's usually the one that's being disproportionately enforced upon, that we have power. And to the other community who usually is less, enforced upon, that this power that we have looks like you and me, and that we will utilize it to control and to herd these individuals that we see as less than human. Because if they actually saw this gentleman as human, there would be a different set of actions. I've worked with enforcement personnel over the years, and I know when somebody is actually following the right protocol in a situation, and when someone is ad-libbing and bringing other things into the mix to send a message out to let folks know, if you mess up, we're going to embarrass you, we're going to treat you as less than human.
This is the parallel to 1919. This is when lynching and all the things occurred those years back. It was done not only to punish the supposed perpetrator who may have done something, because a lot of times they didn't, but also to send to the community a signal. You better watch out. It's almost like my grandmother used to call the tall nail syndrome, where the tall nail is always beaten down. So some brothers were lynched because they bought a car, or because they became postmaster, or because they were uppity. Now, this gentleman was embarrassed in his community, demeaned and humiliated, and is sending the same kind of signal. I mean, your point about who does what and how is so important. So these police officers really, frankly, need to be fired. No, it's not going to happen, but Attorney Crump, if you're still here, you get
right.
on that.
No, he's still here, but I want to bring in Avis. Avis, do you have a question for Attorney Crump, or just a comment?
Well, first of all, just a comment. I kind of want to sort of piggyback on what Mustafa was saying. I think he hit the nail right on the head. This is a function of dehumanization, really. That's really what this is. They did not see this gentleman as a human being, and they felt that it was then appropriate to have him led by a rope via their horses in that way, as if he was some sort of chattel. I mean, this really does harken back to chattel slavery. And so, as Attorney Crump moves forward with sort of calling them out on this and making them prove whatever policy they supposedly have, and making them produce whatever video evidence that they have, I'm wondering, too, is he considering any sort of damages that might be available to this gentleman for having his rights, I believe, his human rights, attacked in such a public and humiliating way?
What say you, Attorney Crump? Where's the lawsuit?
Well, certainly we're going to explore all the legal remedies available to Mr. Donald Neely, but we want to get him help. I mean, spending time with him, he needs to have medical assistance. And so we're going to do everything legally. And in fact, we know this body cam video, at least we believe, I should say, that it has nothing good to justify what these officers did, because had it had something that showed their good character, we would have seen it already. So we know they probably used derogatory and possibly racial derogatory language on that body cam video. That's why they're not releasing it. Attorney Melissa Morris and attorney, hopefully Monique Pressley, and attorney Jeff Daniel Clark, we're working to file a federal civil rights lawsuit, as well as a lawsuit based on the American Disabilities Act.
Yeah.
And the reason we want to do that is because, as Dr. Malvo stated, he had been arrested 6 times in the last year and a half. They knew exactly who Donald Neely was. They knew he had mental health issues. And knowing that in Texas, after the tragic killing of Sandra Bland, there's the Sandra Bland Act that says when you have a person who exhibits mental illness, a mental illness crisis, and or has a mental illness, you can only keep them in a jail for 12 hours, and then you must take them to a psychological ward to be evaluated. Where they kept him about 22 hours, and then when they let him out, they just let him out on the side of the hospital. Now, a person who is suffering from paranoid schizophrenia and is bipolar, you let them out on the side of a hospital, and they're already homeless. Do you really believe they're going to go check themselves into the hospital, or they're going to get back on the streets? And so we know that they realized that somebody had this on video and that it started going viral, and they just cut him loose. And we don't believe they're going to charge him, because they initially charged him. But if they did that, Monique Pressley, you know, in discovery, they would have to give us the body cam video.
Immediately. But here's the thing, Ben, and I'm going to move on, but sometimes people don't realize that these issues many times aren't black and white. There are blue and whoever else against the blue, because in this case, we've got a chief of police who's black, right? And we've got council members. I know there are good and rational people in there, because one of the council members is my classmate. We graduated from high school together. So I'm not going to give up on my hometown. I'm about to make some calls tonight. I sure am. I don't like anything I hear, but I'm talking to him right now, and I'm going to send the link. Come on, Galveston. I believe in you. Get it together. You don't want this thunder. Ben Crump is talking about ruckus on behalf of Mr. Neely.
Galveston, and Bishop Dixon from Houston said he's going to get at least 10,000 black folks to come and march in your small hometown.
Oh, help us, Lord.
Suck it now.
Okay, well, Attorney Crump, I'll be talking to you. Please wish Mr. Neely our best. We are praying for him and hoping that justice is done in this case. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, and we need you to come and lead the march, Monique.
Bye, Ben.
She'll be there.
Bye.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
You've heard Roland talk a lot about marijuanastock.org because he wants to keep you informed of investment opportunities that make sense. We have all watched the growth of the cannabis industry. A recent report by New Frontier Data estimates the global cannabis market at over $340 billion. That's with a B, y'all. We know that marijuana legalization is sweeping the country state by state. We also know that marijuana has a good cousin, the hemp plant, with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all of the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Until recently, hemp farming was practically illegal in the United States and heavily regulated by the DEA. However, the 2018 Farm Bill recently passed in Congress, making it legal to grow hemp CBD in the United States and creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. And they need land to grow all of the plants. This is not rocket science. It's just an incredible investment opportunity, and that's why our good friends at 420 Real Estate come in. Their business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD, grow operations, and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. The folks at 420 Real Estate decided to do something special for the Roland Martin family. Originally, the minimum investment level was $500. Right now, you can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200. That's right, $200 up to $10,000. Let me recap. This is a $340 billion industry that is still growing, and you can participate with as little as $200 to invest. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get in the game, y'all. Do it now.
Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.